While you watch this video, something decisive is happening less than 400,000 kilometers from here. China no longer talks about going back to the moon as a slogan. It has already begun the practical steps to build a real forward outpost. The purpose is not to plant a flag and end the visit. The goal is to build humanity's first permanent settlement beyond Earth, starting with robots and evolving to a human presence on the surface, and, surprisingly, also underground. The stage for this ambition, however, is a relentless environment. The moon has a track record of failed landings and interrupted projects. Touching down safely demands millimeter precision, and even after touchdown, the biggest enemy is the lunar setting itself. There is no air, no atmosphere. Therefore, there is no natural protection against radiation and micrometeoroids. When the sun hits, temperatures exceed 120 degrees Celsius. When the light disappears, the cold reaches about 30 degrees below zero. To make matters worse, days and nights each last roughly 14 Earth days, which means 2 weeks of continuous heat, followed by 2 weeks of icy darkness. How do you keep people alive under these conditions and still make the operation sustainable? The key lies in a staged strategy. In 2019, China executed a historic landing on the far side of the moon with an instrument package that went beyond cameras and sensors. Inside a sealed container traveled a miniature biosphere experiment, a lunar micro-ecosystem with cotton and potato seeds, insect eggs, and yeast. The aim was to close a controlled biological loop, generating air, water, and nutrients with precision. For a brief moment, the impossible became reality. The cotton seeds germinated and a small green leaf emerged. It was the first time an organism sprouted on the lunar surface. Within a few days, however, temperature swings penetrated the module's insulation. The extreme cold killed the sprout. The message was blunt. The moon, without protective layers, is lethal to unshielded organisms. China's response was to double down on caution. Machines first, humans later. This path is divided into 3 well-defined phases. The reconnaissance phase brings together mapping, terrain analysis, environmental measurements, and essential technology trials. The heavy construction phase raises infrastructure, power, structures, and work routes. The human habitation phase introduces prolonged presence with pressurized environments, water recycling, and robust protection. Today, we are in the middle of the initial stage, but the broad outlines of the next leap are already clear. The guiding principle is to use what exists on site to avoid the astronomical cost of transporting everything ready-made from Earth. Every kilogram launched toward the moon burns through budgets and launch windows. That is why in situ resource utilization, the famous ISRU, has become a priority. A mission plan for the end of the decade will serve as a proof of concept to turn regolith into building material. Autonomous robots will collect, perform granulometric sorting, mold, and sinter blocks in high-temperature furnaces. The result is dense bricks capable of attenuating radiation and reducing thermal swings inside. Picture vehicles stacking these blocks and sealing the joints with a suitable binder to raise walls, vaults, and passages. This shell of compacted rock works very well as shielding. The challenge appears when we think about pressurization. The moon has no atmosphere, so habitable interiors must be maintained under pressure. Rectangular shapes concentrate stresses in the corners and fail more easily. The solution is to use the bricks as an external shield, while the pressurized volume adopts rounded geometries, such as cylindrical or spherical modules that distribute forces more effectively. In parallel, an even bolder approach is advancing. Instead of extracting, transporting, and stacking blocks, why not print the structures directly on site? Enter the proposal for large 3D printers capable of extruding a mixture of regolith with an adhesive brought from Earth. The process begins with creating a rigid slab to dampen vibrations from lunar seismic events, the so-called moonquakes. Then the nozzle traces circular paths, raising walls layer by layer. The architecture is inspired by natural systems. Think of the logic of an eggshell applied to engineering. Two surfaces, inner and outer, connected by triangular ribs, form a structural sandwich that withstands air pressure without requiring a metal tank for support. With lunar gravity about 1/6 of Earth's and no winds to topple structures, it is possible to build taller with less material and effort. No base, however, works without steady power. The logistical bottleneck of any civilization starts at the power outlet. Solar panels are useful, but on the moon night lasts 14 days. Storing enough energy for 2 full weeks requires massive batteries. The alternative understudy is nuclear power. From a technical standpoint, the moon offers advantages. Permanently shadowed craters maintain intense cold, simplifying reactor cooling. Waste, which on Earth demands complex management, has less impact in an environment already exposed to cosmic radiation and with no native ecosystems. In 2025, China and Russia announced a collaboration to enable a lunar nuclear power plant. Russia, through its atomic industry, has experience with compact reactors and even powered platforms in the Arctic. Despite recent setbacks in landings, nuclear know-how remains solid. The combination of reliable reactors and continuous robotic construction creates the energy backbone required for housing, laboratories, and mining operations. Once the energy barrier is overcome, the strategy literally goes deeper. The surface is dangerous due to micrometeoroids, radiation, and extreme temperatures. The subsurface offers natural protection. The moon harbors lava tubes formed billions of years ago, hollow rock tunnels left by ancient volcanic flows. Many are wide enough to accommodate entire neighborhoods. Inside these cavities, the temperature remains more stable, reducing the burden of climate control and shielding against impacts. A dedicated mission will carry a ground-penetrating radar to sweep the South Pole in search of these caves. If a network is identified with suitable dimensions, access points, and stability, the first lunar city may emerge as a high-tech underground complex with pressurized modules connected by corridors, artificial lighting, cultivation sectors, and workshops protected by meters of rock. The timeline is ambitious. Effective construction ramps up in the 2030s, with a focus on the South Pole, where regions are lit for long periods, and there is evidence of water ice in eternal shadows. Water means life and logistics. In liquid form, it supplies people and crops. In frozen form, it becomes extra shielding. Split into hydrogen and oxygen, it can become propellant and support respiratory systems. The operational philosophy is pragmatic. No one is going to send people to haul bricks. The first complex will be entirely robotic, with assembly, pressure, and temperature testing, basic water and air recycling, and electrical redundancies. When the first taikonauts arrive, planned for the early years of the 2030s, they will find a pre-commissioned environment. Between 2031 and 2035, a sequence of 5 significant landings is on the schedule, each bringing new modules and capabilities. A command core, a scientific laboratory, a mining and processing sector, and an observatory will make up the set. None of this unfolds in isolation. The United States is running the Artemis program with its own goals for return and infrastructure. What we are seeing is the beginning of a race for presence, technology, and resources. The question is no longer whether we will live on the moon, but who will establish the rules for coexistence, use of craters, ice exploitation, and traffic coordination. How will safety zones, routes, responsibility for debris, and emergency procedures be defined when bases and robots from different countries operate side by side? That debate is still open, but the rush to consolidate positions makes it clear that the moon has become a strategic asset. There is also the human dimension, less discussed and just as challenging. How do you reorganize routine and well-being in a place with no sky, no wind, and no 24-hour cycles? 15 days of intense brightness, followed by 15 of darkness. demand artificial lighting and schedules. Pressurized environments need user-centered design to avoid monotony and fatigue. Controlled agriculture will have to close loops with precision, recycling water and nutrients and controlling temperature and humidity with no margin for error. That cotton sprout that lived and died taught the limits of improvisation. The future calls for robust, redundant, and resilient greenhouses, integrated into life support and power systems that run without interruption. Taken together, regolith bricks, 3D printing, compact reactors, lava tubes, and swarms of robots form a coherent chain. Connected, these pieces turn a radioactive desert into a habitable laboratory. If the approach works on the moon, the lessons will serve deployments on Phobos, Deimos, asteroids, and eventually Mars. If it fails, each attempt will still yield data to correct processes. That is how exploration moves forward, a series of iterations in which each mistake illuminates the next success. What is happening now, just a few days' travel from Earth, is a full rehearsal for the next stage of human history. With machines in the lead, constant power, and shelters molded from the ground itself, the moon stops being just a destination and becomes an address. There will be shifts, routine maintenance, communication windows, and standardized protocols. Someone will wake up under meters of basalt, walk through lit corridors, check pressure and temperature readings, and start another workday on a world that, for a long time, was only a point in the sky. When that happens, we will have crossed a symbolic frontier. We will have stopped visiting the moon and finally begun to live there. And that chapter has already begun, with robots tracing lines in the gray dust, blocks taking shape, antennas rising, reactors on paper, and tunnels being searched for. Space exploration changes level when a place stops being a backdrop and becomes a home. The moon is about to make that transition. If you enjoy this kind of video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Do not forget to leave a like and share. Thank you, and see you in the next video.